They're from my white pants.
All right, we have a tour to take today in a few minutes. I gotta get a few things out there first.
Shush.
But we're gonna go on a little tour of a few places in the building. Let me do a little review, get to today's lesson, and then our tour will kind of back up a few things that I'm going to say there. Okay, when you work backward, when you know the end, here's a few things that happen. From our first lesson we did, you know that you start to see God's plan. We looked at the book of Genesis, how in the book of Genesis, at the end, Joseph is instrumental, despite all the bad things that happened to him, to getting Israel out to Egypt and providing for the Israelites in the land of Egypt. It sets up later on, through difficult circumstances, slavery, a lot of death, a lot of years of that, the Exodus. So if you work backwards and see how God kind of got everything arranged for the Exodus, you sort of know the plan. Even though at the time, I'm sure it was not comfortable, not fun to have to go through that. But you start to trust the plan if you see things in reverse. If you have a spoiler put out there and we know how it ends. Part 2, we talked about when we work backward from the end, the feeling that you get is what? Help me out here. If you were here last week, what did we talk about? What feeling should you have when you see the end going backward? Yes?
Thankfulness.
Thankfulness. Very good. You are thankful when you work backward. Regardless of the circumstances, you end up, hey, thank you, God. Even though it didn't work out like I thought it was, that's just my feelings, and you got the big picture. I need to be thankful for what I get here. So the lesson today, I'm going to spoil it already here by giving it to you at the first here. When you know the end first, you keep little things from becoming big problems. When you see the end first, you keep little things from becoming big problems. Because the Bible story we're looking at today had some big problems. And they started little. And they started building up and building up and building up till someone had to do something about them. And it was not comfortable. But we're going to see how that ended. And we can translate some of that stuff, I think, to our lives as well. So, we're going to go to a book of the Bible called Nehemiah. Now, if you have your own Bible here, congratulations, good job. Thank you for bringing your Bible. Go ahead and turn the book of Nehemiah. If not, go over to the shelf.
Nehemiah? What?
Nehemiah.
Jeremiah or
Nehemiah.
Nehemiah.
what the heck?
Wait. Nehemiah what? Oh, right. Wait, Nehemiah what? I flipped to Nehemiah.
All right. I'm going to organize.
I know.
It's right between Ezra and Esther. I know about Esther. How do I not know about Nehemiah?
I'm going to make sure we're on Instagram if we're on.
How is Nehemiah actually?
Is it the virtual reality?
That guy? Okay, I've never heard of this, so I'm gonna be scared. Man, I can't believe I've never heard of it.
403, if you have one of our church's Bibles here. Nehemiah, we're looking in, well, I'll let you guess. We're doing spoiler alert, looking at the end of things. Where do you think we're going to in Nehemiah?
The end.
13. Nehemiah 13. Go ahead and turn to Nehemiah 13. Hey, welcome those of you joining on Instagram Live. Awesome to have you guys here.
What's up?
We've also got a full lesson for our YouTube audience. Hey, if you're on Instagram in a couple weeks, we're going to be switching over exclusively to YouTube Live, so you can still check us out at the same time, but go over to YouTube and see us there. Nehemiah 13 is what we're looking at tonight. Yes. All right. Now, in the book of Nehemiah, here's a situation for you, guys. Here's a situation for you. People were deep into some mistakes that they were making, okay? Little ones became big ones, and Nehemiah was trying to undo some major problems here that were taking place amongst God's people. Okay, it's kind of like if the gingerbread man knew what was going to happen to him, he would have stopped kind of the process that got him into that situation where the wolf ate him. Okay, if we knew something was going to hit us ahead of time, we'd get out of the way of it. We can see in the book of Nehemiah, at the end here, how big problems develop from little ones, and how these people, if they knew the little ones and how things were becoming issues, they would have avoided it before it got to this point. Just kind of remember that as we read through the book. And We're going to start with the very last sentence in the whole book of Nehemiah here. Can someone read that just last sentence there? There's just one sentence at the very end, according to your version once you're there. The very last sentence in the whole book of Nehemiah. What does it say? I will go ahead.
Remember this in my favor, O my God.
Okay. Nehemiah says this a few times in this chapter, Nehemiah 13. He's saying basically, God, I tried my best, and I hope it was good enough. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. No one else is, but I'm trying my best to change things up and do my best here, God, to fix these problems. So he says things like, remember me with favor, my God. Remember me. And I can see this probably 3 or 4 times. As you read through this chapter, you're going to see it in there too. So every now and then he sort of breaks with what he did and says, you know what, God, I tried to do my best here. I don't know if it's right. I don't know if people are going to follow it necessarily, but I'm doing the very best that I can. That's an important thing to remember, okay? Nehemiah changes some things in this chapter, though. And what I want you to do is I want you to skim through this chapter 13, and when you see something that Nehemiah changes or does, I want you to raise your hand and point it out. Okay, raise your hand first, I'm just blurt it out. But when you see something that Nehemiah does here in this chapter in the Bible, go raise your hand, I'll call on you, and you're probably going to be right, because there's several things that he does in this chapter.
So you just want us to read the whole thing?
Skim it right now.
I can't read.
Okay, read slow. All right. Let us know if you see something that Nehemiah does or that he changes here. Let us know.
Because it's not necessarily a good thing.
Okay? It doesn't have to be good or bad. You don't have to agree with it, disagree with it, or otherwise.
Does it have to be something like that sort of people in some way?
Yes.
Well,
yes. That's most of these
I
things.
found something.
Okay. What do you have?
I kind of lost it. In some.
How about verse 3? How about verse 3?
It's not verse 3 though. It's
I think that's verse 3.
It's verse 8 through.
Okay, that's another one. Yes.
Yes.
Save that a second. I'm gonna get there in a second here. But what does verse 3 say? Yeah.
Verse 3 is when the people heard this law, they excluded from Israel all who were foreign, all who were of foreign descent.
Okay. So here's what you got: a whole bunch of people together from many, many different nationalities coming together, living in Jerusalem around the temple. And the first thing it says here that Nehemiah did, or basically all the people did, was they kicked out foreigners. Now, I have to say this. This is 2021. This that we read is Bible times. Okay? There are some different, we're going to call contextual differences here in the culture of the Bible with the culture of right now. In no way would I ever say that we need to kick out people from this church or youth group or anything, people that weren't born in America. I would never ever say that. In fact, I think our attitude should be entirely opposite of that. But here's what I do want you to know. There's a reason behind this, and this reason that equals the effect of kicking out people that weren't kind of from Israel's nation and race. That reason does apply to us, okay? So in no way would we ever do that. I want anybody ever to think that. Just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean it applies directly one-to-one to our time. There are some differences there. But we need to understand the theme, the idea behind this, and then see how that translates to us. Okay, I want to be really, really clear about this. And you might not agree with that at all. In fact, like looking in today's eyes, you'd be like, that's a horrible thing to do. I get you on that one. Stay tuned, though, for the reasons. But that's one of the things that happened. Okay, Nehemiah kicks out basically anyone of foreign descent. Verses 8 and 9. Now, Grace, what does verses 8 and 9 say?
I became very upset and threw all of Tobias belongings out of the room. Then I demanded that the room is purified, and I brought back the articles from God's temple, the gates, the grain offering, and the frankincense
All right, very good. So what had happened in God's temple, so it's like the equivalent of today's church back in the day, okay? In the temple, they were using rooms that held sort of like some of the things that we used for the worship of other gods, okay? So they sort of like rented out rooms in the temple or allowed other religions, other worshipers of other gods to sort of use parts of the temple. So they're like, now you're getting out of here. We're getting that stuff out of God's temple here. So that kind of sounds like, okay, maybe that's a little bit more understandable, I guess, for our current day stuff here. How about verse 11? We go to verse 11. Is that what you guys were gonna say?
No, I was gonna say that.
Okay.
Yeah, like 10 through 13.
All right, what is that basically saying? Ian, you want to sum that up? Or you can read it too, that's cool.
That's basically saying that all the people who worshipped God, the Levites, were sent back to work in the fields, and all the singers were also neglected, and they were not given food. So the temple of God was basically abandoned. So what he did was he gave all the food to all the Levites and assigned all new grain, wine, and olive oil to all the storerooms, and also assigned supervisors and new priests and scribes.
That is an amazing summary. Excellent job. Very good, very good. So all these people that were working in the temple, they couldn't really be there all day long like they were supposed to on the Sabbath day. They had to go back home and get their food. The idea was, though, that they stayed there all day long because people were allowed to worship all day long on the Sabbath. But the people that were supposed to be working couldn't do that. So basically Nehemiah said, we're going to make it possible for you to do what you're supposed to, just stay all day here and serve the people who are going to be coming, sacrificing to, and worshiping God. Very good. Thank you very much. I got a couple more here. I'm going to help you out. Verse 19, I think. That's a good one. Verse 19.
That's what I was going to say.
You got that one?
Yeah.
Do it.
Mine's a different version, but
Okay.
evening shadows fell on the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath started. So I ordered the gates to be shut. They had to remain closed until the Sabbath was over. I stationed some of my own men at the gates. I told them not to let anything be brought in on the Sabbath day.
Okay. So on the Sabbath day, so this is the day of worship that was just supposed to be worship to God. People were bringing things in and selling them in the temple. People were doing a lot of work that they weren't supposed to be doing on the Sabbath day. So Nehemiah said, no way. We're not even going to make it possible for that to happen. We're shutting gates. The Sabbath day is going to be just for worship of God. That's it. We're going to go back to, and that's what they were used to back in the day, a long time ago before Nehemiah's time. That's what they were used to doing. He said, we're going back to that. One last one here, and this is another one here we're sort of seeing with our modern day eyes. It's different for the context here, the people of this story. Verses 23 through 25. Basically, what Nehemiah is telling the Israelites is that, you know what? We're not going to marry among other cultures. So guys, you're not going to take wives from other cultures. You're not going to take wives from people of other nations around us. Okay? That's another one. In no way am I saying that of you guys these days. Okay? I would never, ever say anything of the sort like that. But there's a reason behind this that I think we need to get to. Okay? There's a reasoning behind what Nehemiah did, as like horrible as that sounds. Like, what? You're forbidding people to marry certain people? Like, yeah, that is definitely something that happened in these Bible times here. Those are the things that Nehemiah had to do because this problem got so big. So these are the end results, the big deal changes that had to get made because the situation got so bad. Now here's how things started. Okay, so this is the end. Let me go way back to the beginning of this story. God's people worship. I see your hand, Ian. Can I get to you later, man?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. This is how things started. Once upon a time, before this book, the events of this book happened, God's people worshipped only God. Okay? They built and they took care of this temple that was their place of meeting with God and worshiping God, all according to what God told them to do. God gave them instructions for how it was supposed to look, what was supposed to happen there. Now, God's people were defeated in battle, and then exiled. Many of them were exiled to this place called Babylon. So Babylon came in with big bad weapons, new technology, new ways of fighting wars, and they destroyed the people of Israel, destroyed the temple, destroyed tons of Jerusalem, took down the walls, and they took a whole bunch of Israel's people back to Babylon. So you got this group that's like all splintered all over the place. Some of them are in Babylon, some of them got left back in Jerusalem, and people were just like, well, God must be dead. Some of them probably thought that way. Just like, how could God let us get defeated? But people that really understood what God's promises were all about continued the worship of God, because they knew, you know what, this isn't the end. God's going to be with us, and God's got a purpose behind the difficult situations we have in our exile right now. Now, Nehemiah was in Babylon. He wanted to restore Jerusalem and start with its walls so that it had a little bit of a border, a separation from the nations around them, so that they were special and different, and they sort of knew who was in and who was out. So Nehemiah asked the king in Babylon, hey, can I go back and rebuild Jerusalem? And the king of Babylon at that time, who was nicer than the one that took over Jerusalem, said, yeah, go back. Go ahead and do this. Take with you a whole bunch of other people that I'm going to send with you to be able to start restoring Jerusalem. And as Nehemiah worked, he discovered that while the people were split up, his homeland had abandoned God. They abandoned the worship of God. When he got back to Jerusalem, he was like, you're doing what? I can't believe you guys, all of a sudden, the way we worshiped here changed it to something that's entirely different. How could that happen in this short time that I was out in Babylon? He came back and he was like, we got to change it. And this is what he put into place, the changes that he decided to make. Now, these little mistakes, these little things that the people of Israel started doing and changing in their worship of God after this exile time turned into big problems. And I want to talk about some of those little things that turned into big things, because that's where I see the translation happening today. You might be looking at some of these things that Nehemiah changed and be like saying, well, so what? Like, so what if this happens? What's the big deal? I don't understand why you got to change that. There are reasons behind that. And it goes along with this one word here we got on the Jumbotron. It's something that you have to understand. It's more than just a word, but it's sort of like a theme. It's a big idea that you see all through the Old Testament. In fact, if you asked me to summarize the Old Testament, I would just use one word for the whole first half of the Bible. And it's this word right here, holy. We have to understand what that word means about God, about God's people, to really get the Old Testament. I want to get to that theme here for the rest of our time today. So, remember this word holy. Remember, Nehemiah had to change a whole bunch of stuff up to get worship back to where it needed to be. And as you're remembering that, we're going to take a little tour. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to just put your Bibles and pens and all your stuff down here. We're going to come right back here in just a few minutes.
I wanted to say that I believe I know why. Exactly about that.
And last thing before we go, we're going to be going some places that, honestly, you're probably not usually allowed in this church. Okay? So,
we take our Bibles with us.
And we got a couple of camera guys that can take the cameras with us, so stay with us if you're on Instagram. As we go,
Take our Bibles.
leave your Bibles, leave your Bibles. As we go, please don't touch anything. Don't be like, oh, what is this now? Okay? Keep your hands to yourself as we go.
Yo, what's up,
Check out these
boys?
places.
Subscribe
Some
to
of you
my
know me.
YouTube
What's
channel.
up, gamers?
Bubble Bob Productions.
What's up, gamers? Boo Boo
Guys,
Ding
Mom.
Dong XD here.
Say Bubble Bob Productions sent you, and I'll give you some Skittles. Probably not, because
Yo,
I'll
what
forget.
protect you guys? Come on. I'll take both.
It's Boo.
You were assigned to good job.
I don't know. Do I take? Where's Ryan?
I'm not sure. I think it just pops off.
Is it like this or something?
I think it's just slides out. There you go. Okay. Keep remembering you're filming. So.
How do I take it out? Dylan! Get back here! You can't just leave me here. Bro, hold on. Got it. It didn't come off, but I got it.
We got to get our way in here, so keep going.
It didn't come off.
Why are you taking a picture?
You take a picture.
It's different than when you're sitting down there.
All right.
Be up here again.
All right. Hey, this is where they run sound, lights, video for our Sunday morning worship here at WCC. How many of you have never been here before? All right. Good number, you guys. Good number. All right. We usually don't let anybody but our staff and volunteers who are working specifically with this stuff up here. Okay? There's lots of reasons for that. Okay? There's really expensive equipment up here. It takes some special skill to be able to run it. We got to make sure that we keep the presentation as good, as professional as we possibly can. So we want to make sure that it's not just like accessible for anybody who wants to take around, walk around the church to go and go visit. Now, for you guys, I got a couple questions to think about, and you don't have to answer it. You don't have to answer it directly, but I want you to think about these things. Now, what if just anyone could come up here and say, Sunday morning service is going, and they just decide to come up here and like, oh, I want to see what I can do with the lights and the sound and the video, and maybe switch up some different angles, or hey, I feel like I can do this. I've watched a couple of YouTube episodes. I got it down. Or they can, turn a few knobs, be like, I can get this to sound better. I'm gonna flip one of these, hundreds and hundreds of knobs, and be like, I can make it sound like it's supposed to. Don't touch it.
Well, they're all light bulbs.
Or what if we didn't train anyone? What if we didn't do the necessary sort of stuff to get you trained so you know how to do all this complicated stuff back here? What if we didn't do that? What if the workers who are up here when worship's going on just decided to goof around and joke around and throw stuff, throw paper airplanes down the bottom? Would it be a little distracting for everyone? Yeah. All right. Do you think?
Shut up! Oh my god!
Do you think it would be a less professional kind of atmosphere here if we kind of let, whatever you want, whoever is allowed to be here? Everybody shake your heads like this, okay? It would be different, okay? We would not get the product that we're going for with our worship if just anybody without the training and really without the discipline to be up here was up here doing the things that are really complicated and require a lot of education and training to do. Keep that in mind. This place, in some ways, is holy. This is a holy place, okay? Follow me to the next spot. Follow me. Don't go yet, but follow me.
Cameraman.
Oh my god! Grace is done.
Where are you going?
If someone pushes me, I will kill them. I believe you actually killed me.
Cameraman, get me in. Get somebody who's actually scored a touchdown. Oh, I can score. He scored a touchdown. Guys, there's a call. In and out.
Imagine losing to the edge Drew.
Yeah, imagine losing to edge. I know where we're going.
All right, just up these stairs and just right here, please. Hey. No, just the stairs and just this level. Here's the deal, guys. There's really expensive stuff there. I don't want it to get stepped on. I want you to stay where you're supposed to. That's part of the deal. Stand up. You don't need to sit down.
I think you're a little close up.
All right, fill in this way so we can get everybody up the stairs. Just those stairs, moving down here. Watch your step. Don't just jump on the stage. There's some stuff behind the speakers we don't want to step on, anything like that. All right, can you guys move on a little bit more? We gotta get everybody up here. Move on a little bit more. Just come on down. Come on down.
Get your big head out of the water.
This way.
It's the one that fits on the
Come on in.
I'm Andre.
Make ways.
could eat a lunchtime.
All right. No. Thank you.
She's attempting to touch
All right.
Move, Bennett, get your big hand.
So this is the stage. Obviously, people speak here on Sunday mornings for worship. And then behind me, we've got the instrumental folks. Get down. We got instrumental folks, a lot of, like in the balcony, a lot of really expensive equipment here in the front of house. A lot of instruments here that require a lot of expertise to be able to use and to play. So not just anybody comes up here. I know right now it just kind of seems like, oh, whatever, it's just another place in the church. But this place is kind of special, okay? And it's special for many reasons, okay? One is, well, you got to be able to know what you're talking about to be up here and to be able to teach the hundreds and hundreds of people that are out here on Sunday mornings. You got to have some expertise in order to effectively lead worship up here with piano, drums, guitars, whatever we have going on here. Now here's the scenario. You don't have to answer this directly, but what if just anyone was allowed to come up here on Sundays and just like, oh, you want to lead worship? Cool. Come on up and do that. No training required. Just jump on up on keys or drums or vocals, whatever you want to do. What if you could just mess with the instruments anytime, just play around with anything? What if we didn't have a separation of speakers and leaders from everyone else? What if it was just like, oh, anybody can speak, anybody can lead as they want to? What if anyone came up and spoke about any topic they wanted to on a Sunday morning? Probably be a little bit confusing. There's probably some people that will like, no, that's wrong, and that's wrong. Okay, there's something about this space and who is on this space that is holy. This space is holy. Okay, take one more trip here. I need to kind of cut through the middle and then
Cameraman goes first. Cameraman goes first. Shut up.
Again, stop.
That's so weird.
Huh?
Did you see what Sean did?
What? Cameraman.
Where are we going next? Kitchen?
Bro, she's good.
Nice sunset going on back there.
Who's baller?
See a little camera.
No.
I'm better waving. I'm a baby.
Wave on everyone. Wave on everyone.
Hey, I want you guys over here. Now, come on. You guys can do that later before small group time.
They're dehydrated.
I need you over here.
Yeah, same. I'm dehydrated, Ryan.
So, a couple things. We pass by an offering kind of station. It's where we have people drop in their offering money on the way in, on the way out of worship services that we have here. And I just kind of want to talk about the whole church in general here too. But let me start with the offering. What if we didn't take offering? Or what if when we took offering, we just kind of said, well, just whoever wants to just reach in the offering and take what they think they need and what's appropriate. That'd be kind of weird, right? It'd be like different. Or, what if we didn't give the opportunity to contribute to what we know is God's work here in the community and abroad through the offering? That's an important part of worship for a lot of people. I know it is for me, and I hope it becomes that way for you all as well. Now let's talk about the whole church here. What would happen here if we said, okay, if we got like, maybe a Hindu worshiping group that wanted to use the church for Hindu worship. Or if we say, we have a Muslim community, which we do in Warsaw, and they wanted to come worship here. Or what if we just kind of said, whatever group wants to be here in the church, that's cool, you can come hang out here. And what if we also said, hey, let's just kind of like get rid of the crosses and we'll kind of get rid of anything that says Jesus so that we're really taking away anything that identifies us as a church. We probably wouldn't do that. Now, again, I don't want you to get me wrong, because I know there's a lot of things that I can say tonight that might be taken wrong. Some of these things might not sound so bad to you. And some of these things, we've kind of maybe taken steps to doing in some kind of way. But eventually, if you make too many, I'll call them concessions, if you take too many steps away from the worship of God and worship of just God, things like the offering and our church as a whole are no longer holy. Here's what holy is, you guys. It's separate, it's special, it's set apart for a purpose. And God is supposed to be holy. God's place is supposed to be holy. The church is supposed to be holy. Our hearts, which are also God's place, are supposed to be holy. And God's people, that's all of us, are supposed to be holy. We're supposed to be different. There are ways that we are supposed to be living as Christ followers. And although we don't do the things that we saw in the book of Nehemiah anymore these days, the principle that they had back in those days remains the same. When they were marrying people from other cultures, what happened was they gave up the worship of God and they worshipped the gods of these other cultures that they were marrying with. Worshiping the God that they knew went out the window with that marriage. When they had foreign people coming into the temples and worship became something totally different because they wanted to just include everyone in what they were doing, God no longer became special to them. Worship was no longer holy and different and set apart just for God. That's the difference. That's why Nehemiah had to do what he did. And the last thing I got to tell you guys before we go upstairs is we got to be careful when we get away from that special, holy, unique worship of just God in our lives. That is what we need to take with us. Let's go upstairs, talk a couple more things.
I'm obviously a better cameraman than Dylan is.
No, I saw one game funny. You know how to do that?
Okay, come on in, you guys. I'm not sure.
Ryan!
This is my guitar. I play a little bit of guitar. I'm not like a professional worship leader or anything like that. I lead some of the kids' ministries out here called 456 from time to time. But just to kind of give maybe an additional example of holiness and how things become less holy as we go. So I paid the money for this guitar. I don't get a lot of new guitars, but I did about a little over a year ago with this sucker right here. And when I first got it in the mail, it cost some money to get a guitar. This isn't like one of those, super expensive models or anything like that, but it's a nice guitar. When I got it in the mail, I always kept it in its case. When I opened it up, I love smelling that new guitar, and I'm like, I'm studying every inch of it. I'm almost afraid to play it, and definitely afraid to play it really hard or crazy or anything like that. So I'm like, this is so cool. It's brand new and shiny and perfect. And I always kept it locked up, and I kept it away from my kids. So they wouldn't be touching it or smearing the nice shiny finish or anything like that. I was crazy just about keeping this guitar in really, really good shape. And it's special, and it's new looking as long as I possibly can. And I love the guy. He's here. He's in high school right now. But there's someone named Isaac Green. You guys know Isaac Green?
Yeah.
And so he kind of belongs in this illustration because he would be like, Ryan, can I play your guitar? Okay, and when it was brand new, I'm like, what am I gonna say? Like,
That's not
like
wealthy.
you're my friend, Isaac, but this is like my brand new shiny still. Smells so good. Like the strings are perfectly like gold and silver on here. Like I don't want to let him play my brand new guitar.
Too much of a possession.
And so at first I was like,
Isaac's the most trustworthy
kid. Can't do it. Alright, so fast forward like 2 months. Okay, so let's get 2 months down the road. So the guitar doesn't get quite as much love as it used to. It stays in the case, and I try to keep it kind of out of trouble. I try to keep it kind of like out from places where someone like just like, oh, guitar, and just grab it. But I did notice that I started leaving it here on Sundays. After I led worship for Club 456, normally when it was brand new, I'm like, okay, kids, you just stay. We don't even breathe on it. I'm just gonna take the strap off, put it carefully in the case, lock that sucker up, and get it away from all the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. You know how they can be. But then I noticed, what? After I played it, I started leaving it out, and I'm like, I'd come back on Monday and be like, I didn't go smart. And there's like crazy kids in the middle of the week playing foursquare here, and a ball could go over and smack it and dent it or something like that. And I just noticed after a while, I'm not paying as much attention to this thing. It's not as holy as it used to be. It's not as special and shiny new and all that as I used to treat it. And kind of right now at this point, I let Isaac Green play it. Yeah. And so as soon as that happens, it's just it's just another guitar now, right?
He was super good, wasn't he?
Bam! Now just anybody can play this new guitar of mine that I wouldn't even call new anymore because it
I
was
just drum player.
getting dirty, getting worn down, and I treat it like
Not a guitar player.
Hey, here's the deal, you guys. Here's the deal. In Nehemiah's day, they started taking little steps away from God. Little things were happening in the people of Israel that Nehemiah noticed after he built his wall that took them away from that perfect, God-ordered worship to something that was totally different. And it started with little stuff. I'm sure it started with little stuff. Just we'll just let that one person do a little something different. And then that snowballed downhill, changed into different things, turned into everybody did that new, different thing. They started making accommodations where they shouldn't have, and things were no longer holy. God was no longer holy. And that meant his people, his place in the temple were no longer holy. That happens with us too, you guys. And when we see the end, we see how badly things can decay. We need to work back and say, let's stop the little things before they become big deal things. Because I work with middle schoolers, but I also see them grow up to be high schoolers and college students, and I see little changes that they make in their love of God and their relationship with God that eventually turn into big things. And I feel like kind of seeing the end, maybe I should probably talk to them when they're middle schoolers about some of these things that start that ball rolling till God is no longer holy in their lives. I feel like I need to tell people, make your worship here holy. Set aside time to do that. Make it special. Make it important to you. And do it. And don't make concessions for, oh, I don't really feel like it. Or, you know what, maybe my friends aren't going to be there. That's when we start to make it less holy to us. When God's name is no longer holy and we start just using God's name in other kind of ways in our lives, and we just flippantly kind of throw it all over the place, it gets a little less holy. And therefore, God gets a little less holy to us. God's word becomes a little less holy. We just don't prioritize maybe looking into it and knowing what it says as much. Maybe we're not part of things like this where we study God's word as much. And then after a while, God's word really isn't holy to us anymore. Our time with God is not holy. We don't separate some time and make that special to be able to talk to God. God's people aren't holy anymore after a while. We don't prioritize our interacting with each other, our talking with each other as Christians, building each other up, doing the things that we should as Christians and supporting and loving and helping each other out, maybe keeping people kind of on the straight and narrow path that they're supposed to be on. But little things now, you guys, build up into a relationship that just breaks down. And after a while, God is no longer special. God is no longer set apart. God is no longer different in the best way. God is no longer holy. And I don't want that to happen to you guys. I want you to take this time in your lives and make things important that are supposed to be important. And you keep them important when they're supposed to be important. And you decide, you know what? This other stuff that can go by the wayside, I'm going to get rid of that instead of the stuff that should be first and foremost in my life. That's what you need to be thinking about right now, you guys. Because it tends to start in middle school, where we start the path that we don't want to be on. And Nehemiah had to do some drastic things at his time. I don't think you guys need to do drastic things at this point, but I want you right now, while it's becoming a habit in your lives, to establish things that you're going to be doing and keeping important to you. Okay? Anyway, we got a couple more lessons in this series for spoiler alert here. Looking at the end first, and then working backward and seeing what we need to be understanding about God, what we maybe need to be changing in our own lives here. And it's really been a lot of fun looking at this with you guys. Let me close by saying this. Keep things holy, or we're going to see the same things happening in our day that Nehemiah saw in his day. Okay? And before we go into our small group time, I want to introduce you guys to a couple people here. First of all, Ellie is here. Ellie's in the back. Ellie Short is one of our small group leaders for our girls. And we also have Jaylene back there, too. Helping us out with our girls' small groups as well. So, Jeremy is not able to make it tonight, so I've got the guys just for me. We're still looking for a couple small group leaders, but we're building up. Okay, so eventually we do want to get to the point where we kind of split up 7th grade girls, 8th grade girls, 7th grade guys. I think we're going to get there, but let's kind of keep praying for the right leaders that we have for our ministry out here. I appreciate you guys being here week in, week out, and making this important, because I think it is. I'm going to pray for us here, and then we'll split you guys up, and you guys can hang out with girls with your girls' small group leaders, and guys, well, you get me today, so. All right. Let me pray for us.
Dylan? Good job, Dylan.
Right.
Good job, Dylan. Great work.
Why are we fighting for Dylan?
Why not? Because he's volunteering.
He's special time.
Dude, he just wanted to.
He was here anyway.
Yeah.
Shut up, anyway.
Let me pray for us. Thank you. Lord, thank you for a beautiful evening. Just a fantastic day to be outside, to be inside. Lord, thank you for Nehemiah and him just kind of setting the example for keeping people holy. Keeping his people holy. Sometimes making unpopular decisions and saying unpopular things in order to get them to that place. Lord, I pray that I can be that way. I pray that we can be that way as well. If we need to say difficult things to hear, that we still do that in order to make sure that you are a priority in our lives, God. Just like, Lord, our church is a priority. It's holy, it's separate, it's different. Like the things that we have out here, like a sound booth and a stage, Lord, I just pray that we preserve the place of those so that, Lord, you're worshipped and you're glorified. And you're given the honor that's due to you, God, that things remain special that need to be special, and that our identity as your people is going to be something that we keep intact all the time, that we take pride in being separate from the rest of the world as dedicated just to you. We are just yours. Lord, make that mean something to us every day. Bless the small group time that we have and the rest of our week. In your name, amen. All right.